To the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. Football season's over. It is the most depressing day of the year. But it could be more depressing if the result last night had been different. So I won't lament too much. Boys, how you doing?
Well, now that you put it that way, that the season's over, it's really depressing, honestly, because we have three NFL games left, which it's not the same for me. College football is my favorite by a landslide, but man, every year we're like, well, it's the wildest season of college football ever. This was legitimately the craziest, most insane season of college football ever, and not just because Indiana popped up virtually out of nowhere in the last 2 years and won a national championship, but like just everything that went into it on the field, off the field, this was nuts.
As somebody who got to celebrate watching his father for the first time in life ever see a championship, what a moment. I mean, I'm not even going to try to hide it. It was a great night for the Thompson household. Congratulations, Dad. Congratulations to the Hoosier Nation. Something that I don't think was ever going to be possible actually was accomplished. It's exactly what you want to see in terms of, the overall great feeling for the little guy out there. And for my family, congratulations. But you know what, TJ? I hate you. Because you had to freaking bring up that the season's over. Like, why'd you have to do that, man? I was in such a good mood. Life was a breeze. And then you had to remind me, oh, wait, we have 200 plus days until we get back to TCU versus UNC in Dublin. Which, by the way, you guys want to go to that one?
Yeah, that's the meetup this year. Sorry, FCS. We're going to Dublin. Yeah, so obviously you guys know this. I mean, it was before we got together, but I went 2 years ago, and I would recommend anybody, like any college football fan. Here's the big problem with that game this year. I don't know if you know this or not. It's not, I don't think it's week 0. I think it's legitimately week 1. Now, I think it's the first game because of the time zones, but I don't love that. I wanted to go, but then I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to miss week 1 of college football for this. So anyway, kind of frustrating with the week that it falls. All right, there was a game last night, and so we can talk about that. We talked before the game when we previewed it, that Miami was going to have to play an A, at worst, an A type of game, and they just didn't. To me, this came down to execution and some big plays. I saw Connolly put out his expected win expectancy, like the win expectancy. I literally saw it as we were logging in, was 17% for Indiana. Like, Miami was better on a down-to-down basis, especially in the second half where they outgained Indiana by over 100 yards. But the blocked punt, the missed field goal, and Curt Cignetti's balls going for it on that fourth down were the difference in the game to me. I mean, like, other than those 4 things, I guess, if he has to, Indiana loses. Like, Miami wins the game. They were better. They were much better in the second half, and Indiana was better in the first half, no doubt. But Miami was much better in the second half outside of, well, I guess the missed field goal was in the first half. But they were very bad in critical situations. And then, I think you guys can do it if you want. I won't take a cheap shot at Carson back. He had one awful throw here in this playoffs. I mean, otherwise, he played relatively clean. It just came at the worst possible moment. And if he doesn't throw it, they probably go do what they did to Ole Miss and find a way to get in the end zone. They were living on 15-yard crossing routes. I don't know why they felt the need to go deep. But other than that, I just think Miami didn't execute it, and Indiana deserved it. Tom, as the representative of the best conference, not even in the sport, really just in history.
Yeah,
as long as there have been conferences.
In the history of humankind at this point. Yeah. 3 consecutive national championships for the Big Ten boys. My goodness, the SEC, it just means a lot less. Listen, this was a war of attrition, to use the cliche. The fact that it was 10-0 at halftime. The first half was a dogfight. I was watching the game with my brother and some friends, and the way that Miami got after Fernando Mendoza, I was like, boy, is Greg Williams calling the defense? Like, you haven't seen a game like that where it was very clear the game plan of one defense was to knock the starting quarterback out of the game. And that probably is a decent strategy. Like, at this point in human history, it's not very nice, or it's unethical, or whatever you want to call it. But it was pretty effective for most of the game. And the fact that you held Fernando Mendoza to 16-27 for 186 yards passing, but he still hurt you on the ground with what I believe was his Heisman moment, that rushing touchdown. people can point towards the passing touchdown to defeat Penn State in Happy Valley. That was incredible, but that eclipsed it. The effort that he put in this game was otherworldly. He was getting killed throughout this game. Miami's front four looked as good as advertised. They gave a lot of trouble to Indiana. What I was really impressed with in this era of going to the air, and you have two really good quarterbacks in this game, both teams stuck with the run. Neither of them was really getting too much. You had some explosives here and there. Fletcher with a long touchdown run, I believe the longest of his career as Miami Hurricane. But other than that, for the most part, these are two defenses that really locked down the running game for the bulk of this national championship. I was also very impressed with the secondaries. Both secondaries were sticky coverage the entire game. And I know a lot of people were upset with the way like the referees called this thing. I like that they just let it be a fight.
Yep.
They really didn't call a lot of penalties. Like there were probably pass interferences that you could call on both sides virtually every single play. And they're like, let the best team win. Go fight it out. It was very, very physical. I was just very impressed with the level of play. I will be the first one to say that, I was thinking Indiana might score another blowout. And granted, had Miami not rallied the way they did in the second half, it could have gone that way. Entirely possible. But very impressed by what Miami did. I'm seeing some people, in the comments section here saying Carson Beck is not elite. Carson Beck is so overrated. I don't think Carson Beck was a problem in this game. I think Indiana's secondary and pass coverage was beyond elite. They were outstanding in this game. He had virtually nowhere to throw the ball. I expected them to try and take Malachi Toney out of the game. He still was the leading receiver for both teams in this game. 10 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown along of 41. Toney was bottled up despite those numbers. Like he really didn't have that many opportunities to go off. They really put the clamps down on him. Obviously, he had the long explosive, which was great, but man, they really put the clamps on this wide receiver core. And it's not that it's a bad wide receiver core or anything like that. Beck, for a lot of the game, had all day to throw and nobody open. So I struggle to put this on Beck. Yeah, the interception there down the end, I've seen a lot of games end that way after what was a pretty clean game from Beck, and he was running for his life a good amount in the second half. But it's the old adage about football is that if you can run the football and play good defense, you wear down your opponent in the second half. We saw both defenses start to give up a lot more in the second half. That's when there were some openings offensively, and it was just whoever blinks. And Miami blinked at the end. They still played a hell of a game. I was really impressed by both teams.
I think that what you have to walk away with is we waited until the very last game of the year to see an all-out physical dogfight to the finish. Nobody was slighted when it came to good on the offensive line and defensive lines being able to go after each other. Miami did everything it could to put pressure on Fernando Mendoza. And you know what? It's a testament to Corey Heatherman and what they were preaching the entire offseason about making sure that they would fix the back end of the secondary so they would be in the situation to begin. And they lived up to it. They truly did. Akeem Mesidor was elite. Ruben Bain being able to win every single one of his battles and put pressure on Mendoza was awesome. What you saw in the interior, the blitz packages were there. And then you go to the flip side, I mean, you can go ahead and say that Indiana's been one of the best defensive lines in college football. Carson Beck had ample time to throw the entire day, and that's a testament to how good this Miami team was. And they weren't slighted. The one thing that I think that we can take away is that there's a lot of us that don't agree with the expanded college football playoff and that we weren't a fan of it. But we would not have gotten Miami in the playoff, and they absolutely deserve to be fighting for a national championship with how they responded throughout the entire postseason and the way they delivered. But there are two truths to every situation. The first is that while Miami was able to deliver a performance to be proud of, they had the self-inflicted wounds at the worst times possible. And on the flip side, Indiana caused those wounds. Like, I don't think enough people look at it from the standpoint of, because we're so focused in on Indiana being a team that doesn't beat itself. They do such a good job of having the fundamentals at an elite level. But then they force you to make mistakes. They forced Carson Beck to throw under pressure, and they nearly had several interceptions in the game because of the way they were able to bat the ball up in the air. Yeah. They did a good job of winning. They had been one of the most underappreciated special teams in college football this year, and they get a blocked punt into the end zone to go up by 10. I mean, they had all of the chances to be able to show you why they can cause havoc as much as they can not have havoc happen to them. And the crazy part is, because of the inability to have those minute details, it nearly cost them a national championship. Because you went from a 2nd-and-1 to a false start going to a 2nd-and-6, and then going up by 10, settling for a field goal. You get a roughing the passer call against Carson Beck on the last drive of the game, the tack on 15, and it gives you a fresh set of downs if you're Miami. It was so undisciplined of Indiana that it just shows you the margin of error to beat this team is absolutely razor thin. You get 1 or 2 opportunities to be able to win, and you can't do it. It was a great game plan in the second half, I thought, by Shannon Dawson. He had a really good execution. Carson Beck, I think, played exceptional. I thought that you look at Malachi Toney. That's the second best wide receiver in college football and probably a top 5 player returning next year. Mark Fletcher is arguably the second or third best running back, if not the best running back returning in college football next season because of what he was able to do against this defensive line. The offense is going to lose some pieces, but they are going to retain a lot of names that are going to be, I think, major factors for this team. And Carson Beck, again, he had arguably the worst throw of the night at the worst time possible. But you're not here without Carson Beck and how clean of a performance he played in all of those other matchups against Ole Miss, against Texas A&M, against Ohio State. So, it's a double-edged sword. You had a quarterback that unfortunately had the worst moment to throw his worst play of the entire postseason, but you were able to go ahead and be here because of him. As for Indiana, I mean, you want to give a lot of flowers and a lot of credit to what Miami was able to accomplish this year and how they responded in this game. But Indiana showed you that as much as it's important to be able to bring in the 5-star talent, development of talent and experience will always weigh higher than anything else. And coaching will matter more. The hire of Kirk Cincinnati will go down as, in my opinion, the greatest hiring of college football. Because if you took the losingest program in the sport, and in 2 years, the man not only backed a claim of saying, I win, Google me, he changed the way that we view Indiana football from a booster standpoint. Because let's just call it as is. And he said in the postgame show, our NIL deal is not really that great. Like, you can go ahead and phrase it however you want, but it's not really that great. Well, it's great now. Because if you got people to buy in to what Indiana football is going to be, and they decided to go ahead and rely on experience, veteranship, and consistency to be the backbone of this team. And when you have that, you don't have the self-inflicted wounds, and you're able to play with a margin of understanding we do so many things at such a high-end click, it's almost impossible to slow us down. That's what made them one of the greatest teams that we will ever see in college football. I don't know if this will go down as the greatest roster ever assembled. I don't, because if you look at that 2019 roster, you look at the 2021 Georgia roster, there are some players that we can talk about at the NFL level that have lived up to expectations. What I will say is this was the most battle-tested team in the world of the college football playoff era, and they fought and earned every single bit to say we are a 16-0 team and the first one in over 130 years to accomplish that feat.
In the first half, they out-Miami'd Miami.
Oh, yeah.
I would have never guessed that, right? We all on those short 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, we all thought, Miami will, Indiana's good against the run, but good against the run means they'll give up 3 yards here instead of Fletcher getting 7. And I was shocked at the 3rd and short yardage situations. Even that 4th and 1, they barely got that. They barely leaned over to get it. Which kind of reminiscent of the Saban one, right? The DeBoer one. That'll always obviously be tied in my mind. Kind of reminiscent of the Alabama play where they knew they had to go get that 4th down. Miami was on their own 35. If they don't get that, the game's over there. And so, yeah, for Indiana to come out and be more physical in the first half and really probably more physical for a lot of the game. And that's not a discredit to Miami. But Indiana won in the trenches at times. Miami's offensive line was phenomenal in this thing. The amount of time that Beck had to throw was dumb. And, Beck threw the interception at the end and maybe could have thrown a couple of more. There were that Aiden kid had one that he could have had in his hands. They had a couple that, were right there for them. But he also made the Cam Ward type play on the 3rd and long to, 24 yards down the field when they had to convert. And so I thought he played fine. And yeah, both of these teams, you think about this. I don't think Indiana played a great game either. I think they probably played a B- C type game. I thought both teams played about about the same. Indiana, from a down-to-down perspective, Miami may have even been a little bit better. When you have a crucial special teams error, when you turn the ball over on your final drive with no timeouts left, and when you miss a field goal, yeah, it's hard to win. When you don't score in the first half, yeah, I mean, it's hard to win, right? Like those are big picture things. From a down-to-down perspective, I thought Miami was probably a little bit better. And, I think we're left with, sometimes in these championship games, we're just left with plays that we'll remember forever. And I think the Mendoza run on 4th and 5, where he has the jump cut, the safety reacts a little bit late. Not only does he get the first, but he gets into the end zone. I mean, put it up there with the Vince Young run. I mean, to me, that's where that play, I mean, it was the play of the college football season. It won them the championship. And I know there were other plays too, the interception, the blocked punt, all those things. If they don't score there, if they don't convert that 4th and 5, Miami went down and scored immediately after. And I don't, you can't ever say that the game is going to play out exactly identical. But that, to me, that play won them the national championship. And it's the greatest singular play in Indiana football history. I think it's in college football. I think it's the greatest play that we've seen since, the Vince Young touchdown. Like, to me, it's the same thing, right?
It's the most impactful play, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it won them a chance. Like, yeah, I'm a Florida State guy. We scored a touchdown with 11 seconds left on first down. Like, there were 3 other options if we didn't score on, you know what I'm saying, from the 2-yard line. This play and the time, and even the way that, like, Cignetti looked annoyed on the sideline, and he was just like, F it, give me the timeout. We'll go, it's like when you're playing Madden and your buddy's like, oh, you're not going to go for it here? And you're like, oh, I'll go for it. And you hit the pause button, and you call your timeout, and you go for it, and you're like, yeah, shouldn't have dared me there, should you? And so, I mean, but a classic game. And I mean, all credit to Miami. I think that, the way that, it sucks in the moment if you're a Miami fan. You're frustrated, right? Like, nobody likes losing. Where we were on November 1st, where we were on this show on November 3rd after Miami lost to SMU, writing them off, saying that it's the same old team, same old Mario, same old Carson Beck. They lost both of those games, Louisville and SMU. Their last offensive play was a Beck interception. And for them to rebound and as a 10 seed make the national championship game and be 40 yards away from winning it, I think that, I mean, we can kind of transition this here in a minute, but I think that they deserve a ton of praise for the way that their season finished up too. And Cole's point is right. I still like the idea of the playoff being about excellence. And I don't know that Miami was an excellent team or a near perfect team, but I think we got the best 2 teams playing last night, and the better team won at the end of the day. The team that executed a little bit better at the end of the day on massive plays won. But yeah, you can't really be upset with how the playoff went down this year.
You also just got to tip your cap to Miami and say you were the first team really in the playoffs and one of the very few teams that it felt like we could easily beat Indiana. Not because of Indiana's going to find a way to screw it up for itself. We're going to take it from them. Like, that was the way that I felt last night watching Malachi Toney and Mark Fletcher Jr. come on out. And they'll be right back in this conversation next year. Maybe they won't win the national title. Maybe they won't be hosting a playoff game in a national title because they'll be in Las Vegas. But they will be right back in this conversation. They got to replace some talent defensively. You are going to lose a Ruben Bain and a Nikhil Mesidor. But that's not to say that you can't run it right back with what you currently have.
Tom, any other big picture thoughts on the game? And then we can go a little bit deeper into what Cole was just talking about there. Like, what's next for Miami? What's next for Indiana? And then we'll talk a little bit Mensa and get out.
This is a really little thing, but the post-game interview Holly Rowe had immediately with Cignetti, he's just so process-oriented. And you hear Saban talk about results versus process, and he is of the Saban tree. When he first started talking, you could tell he was frustrated. And he just won the national championship. And then, like, halfway through the interview, it dawns on him as like, I should be happy. We just won the national championship. And you can tell he's not happy with his offensive line in particular because they got beat a lot most of the night. And he's slowly being like, we struggled here. And it's like, we gave up too many explosives, but like we were able to rally and all that stuff. And he seems slowly realize like, I should be happy about this. That's why they're going to continue to be successful. And there's not enough coaches. There's not enough people like that. I think in our world who are like, yeah, it's great that we accomplished X, Y, and Z, but what did it look like to get there? Was it a cluster, you know what? Was it an absolute disaster? Okay, the result is awesome, but let's work on the process. And I think that's a huge lesson to take away from this within the sport of college football is if you're just going to sit there and be okay with the results and not focus on how you got there and try to improve that day after day, you're going to struggle to keep up with anybody in this sport, let alone Kurt Signetti and company, who appear to have all the backing in the world. Now, Mark Cuban is allegedly behind them. The university clearly has made a huge investment into the football program. So it's really incredible to see what Indiana pulled off. Like, it's really freaking unbelievable, and a perfect season on top of that. 16-0. I don't know if we ever thought we would see that in this era. So congratulations to Indiana.
But before we move on to the next main subject, I just want to ask you guys point blank. Is Kirk Cincinnati the greatest hire ever made in college football history?
I'm going to be biased on some things. I don't know. He's up there. He's absolutely.
I mean, Saban's a pretty damn good hire.
Saban was a great hire.
Yeah.
I mean, Bowden took over a women's college that was absolutely awful and then built them into a respectable program. There have been really good ones. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's way up there, especially in the time frame that he did it. Like, to me, they have 2 losses in 2 years. Both of those losses to last year's national championship competitors. Like, and I know that they were a much different team last year, and I know what their schedule was, and I get all that. But, like, they've lost 2 games to Notre Dame and Ohio State.
They lost to the national champion and the national champion runner-up, and they've beaten everybody else.
I'll say this until my dying day. One of the best coordinator hires ever will always be Brent Venables at Clemson. And look how long they managed to hold on to Venables. And when he left, it's an indicator. Like, these things matter. These people matter.
Let's talk about what's next for Miami. Mario addressed this, and I think and I think he's spot on. He's right. Just because you got close this year, I mean, does not mean that you're coming back. I mean, we've seen historic falls from grace. I mean, I think Miami is built a little bit different. I think Mario's kind of using a little bit of coach speak there, and they will be back in the mix, especially considering their road in the ACC. You know, they're going to be the favorites to win the ACC again next year. We'll see if a loophole keeps them out or not again, but they're going to be really, really good. And we'll talk about the possibility of Mensa here in a few minutes and, you know, what's going to happen with that and just thoughts around that. But the blueprint is there, and the way that they build, they'll obviously have to retool the offensive and defensive lines, which were, as I said, going to the playoff, the best in the country. And, you know, they may have shown that again last night with how Bain and those guys got after it, and then how the offense gave Beck all day to throw. But I'm not saying they're in the national championship again next year. I would expect that they're a pretty solid, pretty good path to make the college football playoff, considering what the ACC looks like. You know, losing that game sucks. You don't want to play moral victories if you're a Miami fan, but they are set up for a lot of success for a long time. And I do think that a loss like this, I mean, Mario tried to downplay this too. I think a loss like this does motivate. Like, he just stood there on the field watching Indiana celebrate. And that guy's already like on 11 at all times, right? Like, he is one of the psychopaths of the sport when it comes to intensity. I think he soaked all that in. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if there are other guys who love their programs, but he's in an elite class to where the job is more than a job to him. Kind of like Kirby, kind of like some of these guys that are coaching at their alma mater. I think he cares more than most coaches, especially considering what Miami has been for the last 2 decades. And I think they'll be right back there next year. Maybe not in the national championship game, but if you're telling me right now, like, I'd be pretty surprised, especially if they land Mensa, if they're not at least a quarterfinal team, if not maybe a semifinal type team.
Yeah, you'd be foolish not to make them the early favorite to win the ACC at like the very least, right? To gain entry into the playoff. The ACC is going to feel a little bit different next year. Virginia, I think, established itself as somebody that's going to be a player. Obviously, Duke feels like they're going to be in a state of flux, and we'll get to Darian Mensah here in a little bit. James Franklin at Virginia Tech, not saying they're immediately going to be in contention for the ACC championship, but Franklin's a proven winner. So I think the ACC is going to be tougher this upcoming season. Whether or not they're a laughing stock like they kind of were this past season remains to be seen. But man, a lot of the pieces are in place. And to the point that Cole was saying, like, yeah, you're going to lose some pieces to graduation in the National Football League, but you're returning a good amount of this core. And again, if Mensa is the next transfer portal quarterback to follow Beck and Ward, that might be an upgrade at that position. It's hard to tell at this point in time. And I want to say this, I've shit on Carson Beck a lot this season. The last 8 games that he played, he proved a lot. I think he is going to have a lengthy NFL career. I don't know if he's going to be a starter for that time, but he should be on a lot of rosters for a lot of time to come. So he proved a lot.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've made it clear for a while how much I like Darian Mensah. I think that he is a star in the making, and if he ends up committing to Miami, which is expected because you aren't leaving if you don't have a plan in motion, then I think that you're in a really good spot to be able to hit not only reset at the quarterback position, but there's also a proof of concept. The other thing is that you now are going to be more focused in on your offense, but you have 2 of the best weapons returning next season. You have Malachi Toney, who is 17 years old and is only scratching the surface about how lethal of a player he can be in space. And you have Mark Fletcher Jr., who is arguably the most physical running back in college football, back in your saddle for next season with an offensive coordinator that has been able to show you that you can develop and consistently grow. You did a good job of adding in some pieces in the portal. I like the arrival of Cam Vaughn from West Virginia. I think that Van Jacobs from South Carolina could be a really good piece. So this is a team that with their schedule, with what they have, they should be at least in the conversation for a college football playoff berth. They should be the favorites to win the ACC. I don't know if they will. What I do know is that the college football playoff, if it expands, will open up opportunities for you to have multiple teams from the same conference, which is a good thing for a team like Miami, because if they're going to show you that they have been battle tested and that they can play through any trial and error and be able to make up for the lost cause there. I don't think that Miami is going to go away quietly. I don't think Miami should go away quietly. What I do think is you take this experience, you let it harbor, you let it fester, and you don't want to ever lose what this moment could have been and use that as motivation going forward. But you are going to lose some pieces. That doesn't mean you have to lose the entire identity of who you are as a program, because you have the coach and you have the guy that wants to be bought in. So long as you have that, you stand a shot. Honestly, that looking at what Kirk Cignetti had been able to accomplish this year, I think it shows you the value of having a coach that is fully invested into a program. A guy like Mario Cristobal is not going anywhere. He is locked in to be the head coach at the University of Miami until he retires. That's a good start.
Let's actually combine these segments. Let's skip down one to talk about Mensa, and let's just keep it organized. And we'll go Indiana at the end because it flows a little bit better, and we'll just do this all as one clip. It feels like Mensa to Miami. People are upset about this, admittedly so. Like, just because it's Miami, I get it. It happened late in the window. If it had happened early, like, they're mad because Miami's the boogeyman, and I get it. FSU fans are too, just because they're tired of seeing their rivals do well. But how big of an upgrade is this from Beck? Is this like he's a little bit better than Beck, but not as good as Ward? Like, is it kind of like you're splitting the difference there?
I think Mensa gives you more athletic ability, obviously, than Carson Beck in terms of you can do maybe a little bit more in the RPO game, maybe design quarterback run, escapability in the pocket, that sort of stuff. Mensa did have his games this year where it was a lot of interceptions and he would give the ball to the other team way too much throughout the season, but the top end was there, and Beck also had that issue at points during the season for Miami. But I think you just get a little bit more from the athletic side. Beck proved he's a very good processor the back end of this season, so you have to give credit to him. I don't know if Mensa is there, and this will be, you're staying within the same league, so I think it kind of helps him out. I think if he had jumped to the Big Ten or the SEC, he would have seen something a little different, and maybe that learning curve would have been a little tougher. But to the points you guys have said, like, the proof is in the pudding there in Miami, and you have arguably the greatest playmaker in the sport on your team for a couple more years. The running game's there. The offensive line is there. Some pieces will move, sure. But, man, he certainly seems set up for success. I think, yeah, like putting your name into the portal on the last day of the portal being open is really rough. And again, like I've said it for years, it's like if people want to have some change in this sport and it's like, oh, it's the Wild West, contracts, man. contracts. And it sucks. Yeah, Duke got hung out to dry, and I have no idea what their season's going to look like now, offensively, at least in 2026. And like, you have Manny Diaz spearheading that whole thing, but like, it's a big question mark in Durham. So, but Mensa to Miami could be electric.
I'm gonna say the quiet. Okay. How do I do this without pissing off a lot of people? I'm gonna piss off a lot of people. I don't know. I feel for Duke fans, and I will make this abundantly clear. This is nothing like Tulane to Duke. This isn't, because if Darian Mensah never came out and said, "I am sticking with Tulane." Oh wait, Duke is offering me how much money if I go into the portal on the last day? No. I'm gonna go. It's a completely different narrative because of you thought that you had your quarterback until you didn't. You thought that he was signed on the dotted line. You worked out a brand new NIL deal. And unlike Damon Williams, you weren't going to be able to go ahead and keep him around. It was just going to lead to an opportunity where you say, sorry, guys, like there's a way that we can get out of this contract deal. He's going to take it and he's going to run with it. It sucks for Duke. It absolutely is terrible that we don't have any loyalty, that we don't have any commitment, that these contracts, they're basically just they're just a lost cause. You can go ahead and say whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Okay, now with that being said, I've already taken out an early play on Darian Mensah to win the Heisman Trophy next year. I think it is honestly one of the best fits that you are going to see in college football, and I think it's an upgrade over Cam Ward and over Carson Beck.
Ooh.
I am okay with saying that. I think that you're giving him Shannon Dawson as his offensive coordinator. This was a guy that last season was top 5 in passing yards, completion percentage, passer rating, passing touchdowns, and he had 6 interceptions. I mean, like, I'm sorry. You're giving him Shannon Dawson. You're giving him Malachi Toney. You're giving him an offensive line that is going to be properly developed. All these little intangibles that go such a long way. I'm very sold that Darian Mensah is going to be a superstar. And I believe that he is going into a perfect situation that is only going to elevate his overall status of being a future NFL player. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt a team like Duke, because if it absolutely does, it hurts a Manny Diaz-led roster, a team that played and won the conference championship in the ACC and then won their bowl game over a very good Arizona State team. But if you're asking me from a standpoint of, this is a deal that's going to get done because of just the nature of business in college football and fit perspective, I don't think that Darian Mensah could go to a better location and flourish more. He is going to absolutely shine out in South Beach next year.
I will say this, not to cut you off, TJ, but like the race now for the top 3 quarterbacks in the 2027 NFL draft, Arch, Moore, Mensah, and I don't know what order that's going to be. Like, literally, it's going to be a fight the entire season. The Heisman, yeah, I understand that, but like, screw the Heisman. Whichever one of those 3 has the best season, that's going to be the thing to watch. I'm really excited about that.
I'm very excited to see Shannon Dawson and Darian Mensah pair together after what I saw with him with Joe Craddock and then what I saw with him out in Durham, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So a thought here on a comment. The point is that Mintz isn't that Mintz is entering the portal. It is that he has had a contract with Duke that he is breaking. A couple of thoughts there. One, you saw DeMond Williams not be able to get out of his contract. Right. The Big Ten put out standardized contracts that all of their universities used. The ACC did not. And it sucks, but leadership matters. And you can think whatever you want about Tony Petitti, and you can think whatever you want about Jim Phillips. And obviously the ACC had other things going on for the last 2 years with Florida State and Clemson. But he did break a contract. If it was not a contract that was breakable, he would still be in Duke Blue. Like that's the end. That's the bottom line into the story. If you work for AT&T and you have a year-long contract and Verizon comes along and offers you a better situation and that contract has a non-compete in it, then you're not going. Yeah. But if your contract is breakable, you're out. And that's what this comes down to. DeMond Williams essentially had a non-compete that he couldn't get out of. Not from a legal perspective, was it a non-compete? No, it's a little bit different. There's buyouts, there's other things. But essentially, he had a non-compete. Mensah didn't. And ultimately, that's on Duke. Maybe that's on Mensah's agency for not signing away his rights. Mensah's going to a better situation. He's going to a better situation from not only an NIL perspective, but if you remove NIL, like in your mind, remove the idea of he's getting paid more to play at Miami than Duke. He's going to a better situation for his future too. And so Yeah, I don't like Miami. I'm glad Indiana won last night. I don't like them getting Mensa. But he's going, I mean, the only way you're upset with this is you either hate Miami too much to be objective or you like Duke. And either way, that's fine. I'm okay with that. We're fans. We want to see certain things in sports. But everything that NACOS was reporting, everything that's coming out, I mean, Miami will spare no expense to get him. And, you know, I said this with Levitt and ended up being wrong. So maybe I can go for 2 on this. But I think they're going to do whatever it takes. And what? Because we're in this gray area of, look, if you got a revenue share contract that can't be broken, all right, we'll pay you through our NIL funds. Oh, you got an NIL contract that can't be broken? All right, we'll pay you through our rev share deals. I think there's too many loopholes and he'll end up getting out, and I don't think it'll be a problem at all, but we'll see. I do hate it for college football, like just in general. Like, it sucks for the sport. There was a value in seeing guys develop and play at a program for 4 years. I get it, man. And, you know, as bad as I may feel for the Duke football fans, I mean, you guys win a lot of fights in basketball because of money. So I don't feel that bad. You know, start spending money in football and things will be different. So look, don't know what to tell you.
I can say this is because I was in a non-compete. And when my company was bought out that I worked for, they gave us an opportunity to say, you could leave and we will pay you through the end of this current contract that you're signed to. But if you sign on, you are here for a year. And if you ever decide to leave, we will sue you if you go to another company. You are not allowed to leave. It's a risk that you have to take. You have that in the Big Ten. You have that in the SEC. You don't have that at Duke. You don't. And I hate this because I wanted Duke. I genuinely say this from the bottom of my heart. I am such a big fan of Manny Diaz and such a big fan of Darian Mensah. I picked Duke to be the surprise team in college football this year. I wanted Duke to get back to the level of consistency that I thought we were going to see this past season. But when you don't have a non-compete, it leads to this. And unfortunately, this is the new norm in college football, where if you don't have an opportunity in motion to go ahead and get this deal done, guess what happens, guys? A team like Miami that did not have a quarterback situation going into the national championship said, you know what, screw it, last day of the season. Here we go. Here's what we're going to offer you. And they're going to do it.
We're getting more contract questions. No, I have not reviewed the contract. I guess that's for the lawyers to determine, and we will circle back
when you review the contract. Tony B, 1695. Shut up.
When he's wearing orange
and green next year. Any of this stuff. We're going on as much as we know. Yeah. And inevitably, if he goes to Miami, there's this thing called, I don't want to be here. And places are like, okay, we're not going to force somebody to be here. Like that.
When he's wearing blue, I want Tony to come back in next year and say, I told you so. When he's wearing orange and green, I'll say I told you. I don't know where he's going to end up, but I think he's going to end up in Miami.
Tony. Tell me why the better situation except the contract law. Because Miami just sent a #1 overall pick and just got Carson back to the national championship. It's a better situation with Shannon Dawson.
By a landslide.
It is. And it's just not me saying that I don't want this for Duke. I want Manny Diaz and Darian Mensah to be together because I like Duke football. I do. But
I want it because I don't like Miami football. See, we're in agreement here.
And tell me that Shannon Dawson, who just took a kid who was a day 3 pick and turned him into the #1 overall selection and a Heisman finalist, and Carson Beck to a national championship, that is not a better situation from a player's perspective. You cannot convince me otherwise, other than I don't like Miami and I don't want Miami to have happiness. Like TJ does. TJ's honest about this. Very honest about this, and I appreciate it.
I told you to shut up, Tony. That wasn't nice. I'm sorry.
It wasn't nice. How dare you?
It wasn't nice.
Tom's a jerk. All right.
Tom is so mean.
We have a couple of minutes.
Jerk. Yeah. Let's talk about Indiana. The
Tom has to get out of here.
Football. 3 consecutive national championships for the Big Ten from 3 different teams. Pretty impressive in the grand scheme of things. What's even more impressive for Indiana is that I have every belief that they could run it back at least as Big Ten champions this coming year. Your money, if you're betting, should be on Indiana to win the Big Ten this upcoming season. Now, you can look at Ohio State and look at the firepower they have coming back on offense. Ohio State's going to lose some pieces on defense to the National Football League that are critical, but they've proven the ability to reload year after year. But that defense also wasn't enough to shut down Indiana. So what else does Ryan Day have up his sleeve coming up this season? He has to replace his offensive coordinator, a couple other things going on there. But for Indiana, it is a senior heavy team, but it's more so like there's some juniors that have decisions to make that probably could go off to the National Football League. The one I'm going to be paying attention most to, I think, is Omar Cooper Jr. I believe he is able to come back next season. If I have the eligibility wrong, my apologies. But if he's able to come back next season, you also have Charlie Becker, who is listed as a sophomore. And then you add Nick Marsh from Michigan State and Hoover coming over from TCU to be your starting quarterback. And kind of like Miami, a system that is proven it can take transfer quarterbacks and get really good play out of them, going from Navarro to Mendoza and potentially here to Hoover. So if you're Cooper, yeah, you probably could go. I don't know necessarily where he would be in the draft in terms of rounds, but I do think if he stays, that passing attack is as good, if not better, because Surratt and EJ Williams, I believe, are off to the National Football League. Both tailbacks are seniors, I believe, are both off to the National Football League. Coogan at center, who ironically played in back-to-back national championships in the not in the same stadium, but he played in the Orange Bowl last year for Notre Dame in Miami, and then a year later he wins the Natty with Indiana in the same stadium. So fascinating situation there along their offensive line. Their defensive line is going to take some hits. Secondary is going to take some hits in terms of the draft. D'Angelo Pons, I think, is certainly going to be one of the more coveted cornerbacks. I don't know if he's a first-round pick, but he really upped his stock as the season went on. So there's going to be some pieces to replace, but it's really hard to look at what Curt Cignetti has done the last few years and say, he doesn't have somebody waiting in the wings, or he doesn't have somebody developed or ready on time, all that sort of stuff. And he's proven what we believe for a long time. The star ratings, they don't matter. The preseason ranking, I know there's like place like On 3 that I've already put out their top 15s or their top 25s or whatever. None of it matters. But when you look at what Indiana put on the field the last 2 years and was able to get out of their players, you're getting to the back end of the time of the guys that followed Cignetti from James Madison. So that culture and that core is going to have to be replaced by true Indiana guys. And I think that's where a guy like Charlie Becker is a really nice homegrown story. I love, by the way, seeing a fullback be an integral part of the offense once again in 2026. Nowakowski, I thought, played a really solid game, out of touchdown, obviously. So you're going to have to replace some pieces here and there. Everybody does. That's the way it is. But that offense has the chance to be even better from a passing standpoint this upcoming season. Hoover, I don't think, is the same talent as Mendoza. I think Mendoza really separated himself this year. And Cole, I know you think a lot of Hoover from TCU, but I think there's a lot of positivity. It's really hard to bet against Indiana being the Big Ten champion next year.
No, I have Indiana as the number one team returning in college football. And honestly, because of you have the head coach returning, that automatically should make them number one. That's just my opinion. Now, again, if you want to say because of what they're losing with Fernando Mendoza and you don't know what you're going to get with Hoover, who I believe can be a very solid quarterback. I'm not sure if he'll ever be Fernando Mendoza Heisman Trophy winner, but then again, nobody ever thought Fernando Mendoza was going to be what we saw this year. They've done a great job of being able to back portal in some names. And you know what the best part is that Pat Coogan was a guy from Notre Dame who came on into Indiana where he could have gone anywhere in college football and said, you know what, I want to go to this location. I want to play for this school. And so that was the first time we saw a premier player go look at Indiana and say that this is where he was meant to be. Well, this past season, we saw multiple premier players say that they want to go to Indiana. Nick Marsh had offers from Notre Dame and from LSU, and he said the best place for me to go is to Bloomington to go be developed by Curt Cignetti. You talk about Turbo Richard coming on in from Boston College. That's a good replacement for what you're losing with Hemby and Black. Omar Cooper and D'Angelo Pons are two players who absolutely could go pro or come back next year. Now, I think at least one of them is going to go pro, if not both of them go pro. But you were able to find a replacement in that standpoint because Charlie Becker's not going anywhere. His role is going to expand in the offense. And you went out and you added in A.J. Harris, who was an elite cornerback prospect coming into the University of Georgia. He had a solid first season out of Penn State. If he rebounds and gets to the level he played in 2024, Indiana's going to have an All-American replacing an All-American. So this is a team that should feel like that they are confident that even if they weren't to go 13-0 next season and win the Big Ten, they're going to be a playoff team. They've arrived. They have the funding. They have the development of talent. It's a big deal that they did lose their strength and conditioning coach towards Tennessee. That was reported this morning that they are going to have a new guy leading the charge in the strength and conditioning department. But still, this is a team that where until given a reason, you doubt them at your own will. Because last season it was okay to say, okay, Indiana with their schedule, with who they faced off against, maybe we're not going to believe that they can go run it back. They just went 16-0 and played one of the toughest schedules, and the mentality standpoint was so strong that it's really hard to doubt them moving forward. If you do not have them in your top 5, I have no idea what you're watching. If you do not have them in your top 3, I really have no idea what you're watching. And if you don't have them at number 1, you better have a damn good excuse of why they're not in that spot. They have everything back to be able to respond and go right back into the conversation of being a threat to win a national championship.
I'll wrap this up by saying make sure that you give some love to our friends over at Sleeper. Use our code CFA for a 100% match up to $100. We didn't track our Sleeper picks all year, but we did track the national championship. And Cole, why don't you just run down that real quick that you sent us last night?
TJ Pittinger, congratulations on winning at 9-3. Your 3 losses were to Keelan Black hitting the less of 60-plus rushing yards. The Surratt touchdown, which we
this is how I feel right now,
which we all lost to, and the all for the Omar Cooper touchdown. Tom, you went 6-6. I went 3-9. I sucked.
I'd like to take this moment and say that all my shitty picks all year led me to one good game, and congratulations to me. So, no, we appreciate Sleeper. We'll keep working with them through the NFL playoffs and then through February and hopefully beyond. Had some fun with it. Go check out the picks for the playoff games this weekend, NBA, NHL, all that stuff. Boys, this was a fun season. The best news, though, we're not going anywhere. We'll be back. Probably, Sunday or Monday. We'll figure out a showtime, but we'll keep
the NFL season's over for me, so whatever. It doesn't matter for me anymore.
We'll be back soon. Appreciate you guys for tuning in all year. We'll talk to you soon on the Power 2.